Hello, everyone. So we're going to finish this batch up. Now, I wanted to show you how the wax itself turned out, but unfortunately, Bill Gates likes to make everything automatic when it comes to updating things, and computers only update when you're trying to do something important. If you're just playing on them and doing nothing absolutely important, computers work perfectly fine. The- But when it comes to actual serious work, they always got to update and do stuff like that at the time that you want to be working on something. So I'm trying to keep this around 200 degrees centigrade, and we're at basically 212 degrees, 215 degrees centigrade. So I got to turn the temperature down. I don't want it that hot. Turning it down, trying to get it so it doesn't turn the little light on. Okay. And yeah, this wasn't who knows what the color this will turn out, but we're gonna be adding beeswax in a little bit, which will temper out the batch. I wanted to show you this from a solid block, but Windows wanted to update, and it took like an hour and a half for it to do whatever it needed to do and restart and all that fun stuff and update it. So it just updated yesterday. Why does it need to update today? I don't know. I'd rather just figure out how to disable so it doesn't update. Because most of the time they work better before they update anyway. In fact, I like old Windows way better than the new Windows because this computer is supposed to be a good computer and it's slow as molasses in January. Always has been right out of the box. So we're at 205 now, 206. So the temperature is dropping. And dang it, it didn't turn the dang heater on again. So I'm going to turn it down more because I like to put my temper in at around a little over 200 degrees. Now, other people like to put them in at 450, but things like beeswax and ceracin and paraffin, that kind of get funny if you have them hotter than that. They actually kind of start decomposing. And we don't want to do that. So, uh, checking the temperature again here. And it looks like we got audio because my little microphone shows a green dot. And that usually means that I have audio. I'm using the M Audio, which is the company known as Pro Tools. It's a Pro Tools microphone. It looks a lot like a Neumann 87, but it's a USB condenser microphone and doesn't have a gold plated diaphragm like the Neumann does. But it sounds halfway decent. It's a pretty clear microphone. I like the Yeti too, but I could not find the cord to it. I like the Yeti because it's stereo and I like moving around. I also have a Sony Handycam that's nice to use for some of my. I got like a couple different cameras now that I'm using. This is just a regular webcam connected to my laptop to go streaming. Well, it looks like we're close enough. What I'm gathering is around 204 degrees centigrade, which is a good place to be. What I was getting for my reading there. I should kind of have it. Should have had it in the picture. I guess you could see it a little bit. It's kind of weird. The camera doesn't even look like it's looking at the temperature, but you can kind of see. We'll take another temperature reading just so you know. I like my wax well combined. So you can see the temperature here. 70. Believe me, it is very hard sometimes to hold anything over this pot. It is very hot. See? 190, it goes 195, and it just keeps on. Long as it's around 200, you're good. And it'll stay around there. That's good. 192 to 197 is a safe place to put your temper in. Doesn't burn it, and it'll combine it just fine. Yeah, see? There, we're at 204, 205, 206, 7, 8. So that's good. It's really a 208 degrees is a really, anywhere in there is good. You just don't. A lot of people add it at 450. So what we have here, let's recap on our formula again. So our formula is 1,173.92 grams of octadecanoic acid, better known as stearic acid, basically animal tallow, triple press stearic acid. Here, I'll show you the bag that it comes from. And this bag, it's time to reorder again. But I might try to get go back to an older stearic I used to use. One of my favorite kinds. So, see if I can put it in the picture here. This is a bag. This was a 50-pound bag of stearic acid. And since like 2014, I've used about 150 pounds. Just that. And before, up into 2010, I used over almost, well, basically a ton. Basically 1 ton of stearic acid of cylinders. So let's take another temperature reading, and then we'll add our beeswax. Let me go back to the formula again. I was reading the formula off, wasn't I? Well, let me go back. I got sidetracked because I talked about octadecanoic acid. So we had 1,173.92 grams, which is 73.31%. Caustic soda NaOH, 91.52 grams, or 5.72%. Oh, that turned off, but it's... Wow. I cannot keep my hand there. I don't think the temperature... Sometimes it's hard to keep your hand over here. It's very hot. Basically, we're at 199 degrees centigrade right at this point. To keep it at I'm going to also put a timer in. I want to cook it in for 20 minutes after it's melted. When we see that it's melted, and you got to like put it down there really carefully, but we're putting our temper in. This is beeswax. What it'll do, it'll help it cut. It helps the wax cut. Okay, it's what makes it keep moisture out of it and cut. And I've done tests with these wax cylinders, and I've never seen any efflorescence or anything in the wax. So we'll just keep a careful eye on the temperature and see what it does. Oh, that's a really unique smell. It actually smells pretty good. So, oh yeah, aluminum. We were at lye. So let me do this again. Stearic acid, 1,173.92 grams, 73.31%. Caustic soda NaOH is 91.52 grams, or 5.72%. Aluminum, 7.52 grams, or 0.47%. Beeswax, 240 grams, or 15%. And there must have been a little moisture from something on the wax. Probably me playing in the kitchen. I probably had wet hands and down there. It's not going to hurt anything. The water just boils off. It's really hot. Way hotter than water is, so water just boils off of it. The main thing about making cylinder wax is you have to heat it and cool it and heat it and cool it to anneal it. And also, when this is fully melted, we'll put off a little sample. So we'll find something to make our sample in. We use a little bit of aluminum here. We need some sort of lid to form a type of sampler. Okay. Something. How about a quarter? Quarter is a good thing to kind of use for size. That's a good size for a sampler, is a quarter. And rip the top off. Okay. It sounds like it's having fun. So put our little sample in here. We're going to stir it a little bit. I have to be very careful when stirring. believe it or not, that beeswax totally went into solution already as far as combined. So what we'll do is we'll set a timer for 20 minutes. How's that sound? So this is going to have some really interesting color to it. To be honest, from what I'm seeing of this color, I saw that color before. One time I was at Union and they were playing a Columbia Master record and it had that color. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't it be nice if we actually duplicated the Columbia Master formula here? Be nice. So I'm gonna plug it. Oh, I guess it is plugged in. It's been plugged in for a heck of a long time. So I'm gonna do a 20-minute cook in, and we're gonna check the temperature. I'm using a atomic clock. Literally, it's not. What I mean by atomic, it's got radium dial on it, which is really bad for you. But it's a photo timer from the '60s for a dark room. So that's what I'm using. Oh, this smells heavenly. It's really actually smells quite good. I don't know if we got anybody watching. No, we don't have anybody watching. We never do, and so people miss some good live action here. But let's take a little dessert and take a look at it. But that's a really interesting color there. Let's see. Oh yeah, that's about the color of that Columbia Master record somebody had. I was suspecting this is going to be a really nice formula. Because usually when they did finer mastering work, they included beeswax on it in the early days. Because for commercial records, they wouldn't use beeswax; they used Saracen because it was cheaper. But for mastering records, they use beeswax. Berliner records are basically mastered on beeswax. Pretty much, that's what makes a Berliner record the master for it. You have a zinc disc that is coated with beeswax that was dissolved in petrolized ether. And they coated both sides of a zinc disc. And then they had a sewing needle, basically, on the recording head. And you sang into it. And the early Berliners actually were hand cranked. And then later they had a little electric motor on them that ran the recording lathe. And so that's pretty interesting. We better take a temperature check here. Yep. Well, yeah, we'll cook this for 20 minutes. See where we're at for temperature. Nice thing is, if this messes up the little thermocouple, I can always order them. They're not that expensive. The whole darn thing is pretty cheap, actually. And it's a nice scientific Lutron scientific thermometer for high temperature work. Oh, we're at 189, 190, 91, 92. So it's coming up in temperature, 93, 92. So that's what I'm, well, I got a 96, 97 now, 98, 99, 202, 23.1. Oh, I want to put it in line there so you can kind of see where we're at, or I'm not kidding with you. We want to, as I said, I like to put it in around 200. It's a good place to be. You heard how that went below 200 and you heard the little thermocouple turn on. So that should be good. We'll check it in a few minutes, make sure that it's still around 200 degrees. Uh, but it's kind of interesting that the color seems to be very similar to Columbia Master Wax that they saw. Boy, does it have a really nice smell. Very aromatic. You'd think it was a candle, but as we know, that it's a metallic soap and it's very hard compared to a candle or whatever or soap. There's actually I have a patent I gleaned. It's a 1909 patent for an Edison master record that is actually says made out of pear soap. Now you're not going to be able to do any kind of playing on that, so you have to really know how to look at your sound waves, which I don't think very many modern recordists really know how to look at the sound waves and know, well, there might be a few that know how to look at the sound waves and know that they're making a good record. But I like to hear it, so I'm sure when they were pretty much setting up the older recorders for lateral records, uh, they'd run a test to get the sound that they wanted. Process it into a test pressing, and then note how that recorder sounded. Of course, no recorder ever sounds the same anytime you use it because acoustic recorders are affected by barometric pressure and humidity and temperature. Of course, most of the time you have to have your studios used to have for disc records anyway. You used to have a warming cabinet to try to keep the records about 100 degrees. And lo and behold, a lot of the modern blanks, when you make a modern record as well, the lacquers, you want to keep them also around 100 degrees when you record on them somehow. A lot of them have heated styluses, of course, on like Neumann lathes and such. They have a heated stylus, so it makes the least amount of noise. I have a couple records that I've listened to recently that are from the 50s, and I don't think the record was damaged. I just think that the darn record itself was just noisy from the beginning. We're taking another temperature reading, see where we're at. And it's good. This the thermocouple in this little soil test is doing a good job of keeping it right around where I wanted it, which is around 200 degrees centigrade. That's not 200 degrees Fahrenheit. You wouldn't The wax would barely even be melted at 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, we're about 200.2 degrees roughly. You can kind of see the color that's on here, and this is a color I actually did see. Oh yeah, it's going to be good because I'm just kind of doing my finger. It's still hot, but that should make a really good recording. Our soap base is really is pretty hard as far as 0.47% aluminum. So this should be very interesting. Another time check for temperature. Checking the temperature again. It has a really nice smell. It's actually smells really good. If we find this is too soft, another batch, I can always reduce it. I one time used 12% beeswax, and it was a little hard. And this is 15, so maybe something like 13% would even be good. 13 to 14% beeswax, and 0.47% aluminum is a good amount. That's what the commercial Edison amount was in the 1890s. Try and keep your hand there. It's like if you keep it there too long, you're gonna blister your hand. So I'm just trying to just trail it in there as much as I can. Again, we're keeping it, or this is it's about 212 centigrade, 213. Edison's original molding temperature for brown wax was actually 330 degrees Fahrenheit, just to let you know. It was their standard molding temperature back at that time. Hey, and I do have a green dot for audio, so we should have audio. So this is a TM902C. It has a range from negative 50 degrees centigrade to 1,300 degrees centigrade. I also have another end that's a thermocouple. So what I'm thinking about doing that is getting some thermocouple paste, and basically there you can get this copper tubing. So on the end of it, you solder it real good with silver solder. Well, I don't know about that. It's probably better to actually fold the end over like 3 or 4 times and try it that way. And put a little thermocouple in there with thermocouple paste. I kind of put in there basically a permanent thermocouple so you don't have to dangle or touch it. It'll always tell you the basic temperature of the wax. That's my next step, so that copper itself is not that. I'll have the element a little higher, so that copper is not so affected by the action of the wax as aluminum. This is some sort of aluminum that this crucible is made out of, but I started using it in like 1999, so it still hasn't eaten any of it. So it must be some sort of alloy. Ooh, yeah. So we're around 220 actually. Now that I've had it in there for a while. Yeah, 220 now. I think it's about time to turn it down a little bit. 220 is fine, but I'm going to turn it down. 232 is what a lot of people use. But our time is almost done anyway. We only got like 9 more minutes. I don't know if anybody's watching this or not, but that's still going to be fine. It has a pretty neat smell. When I know that it's finally when it goes buzz, I'm going to take a nice sample, a big sample of it to check the wax properties. So yeah, this is some really different kind of wax because it doesn't have saracen or paraffin. It's tempered with natural beeswax. Not even synthetic beeswax, but natural beeswax. There are beekeepers around here that I can buy beeswax from. I just hope that the bee population remains well so I can obtain beeswax. Plus, we need them to pollinate our flowers. Yeah, I'm not the greatest environmentalist in the world, but let me tell you that the worst thing we have is insecticides because they really do mess up bees, and we can't be messing our bees up. And that's an absolute truth. There's no silliness or anything in that. That's absolute truth there. So it's maintaining a temperature of 220 degrees pretty much. So I'm going to turn it down a little more. I don't want the little light to turn on. So I'm going to turn it down a bit. So we're almost done with the adding this temper. You know, this is pretty quiescent. It's kind of really got a yellow color to it. Because I couldn't show you this, but when the soap dried, it was basically cream. a cream color wax. So we added beeswax to it, and now it's kind of a yellowish brown color. Who knows what color it'll be once I anneal it? Because when you add the temper, then you have to heat it and cool it again with uh, you gotta heat it and cool again with the temper before you can mold a record from it. It's a lot of steps, and people are like, "Why in the world do you do that?" It combines all of the everything that it needs to do. So yeah, we only got like 5 more minutes left, so before I shut the heat off. And I suppose we better check the temperature again. It never hurts to check the temperature again. I'll tell you one thing, it is hard to keep your hand over here. And I'm getting 202 to 27. Oh, there it goes up. 212, 14, 15, 16. So we have dropped a little bit in temperature. That's good. Because I really like to have it more like 200. In fact, I'm going to turn this down a little bit more. Kind of reminds you of coffee or tea or something. That's also what Mr. Richards says it reminds them of too. It's like it's kind of like a tea, kind of. Mr. Richards makes some very nice blanks, but I don't know how. Haven't heard from him in a while. I don't know how if he made any wax this year or what's going on. I haven't heard from him in several months, which is very unusual. I hope he's okay. I don't get to do as much with cylinders as I would like to. I work 58 hours a day in a factory, so about 58 hours a day, 58, 58 hours a week in a factory. Sometimes 50 hours, but most of it's like 58 hours a week in a factory. So that's why I don't do as much cylinder work and why I don't accept orders unless they're like for a museum or a special project. One of the really interesting projects I did one time is how many of you have read Isaiah 45 in the Bible? There's King Cyrus. Well, I made a King Cyrus cylinder record that was actually displayed. There is a cuneiform cylinder uh, from from King Cyrus that King Cyrus wrote in cuneiform clay cylinder that basically tells about himself. And I made a wax cylinder with the inscription on it. These children, basically, there's a little music at the beginning, and then these children basically are reading the inscription. And the cylinder record was displayed next to the Cyrus cylinder at the San Francisco Asian Museum. I hope I got the name right. San Francisco Asian Culture Museum, I believe it's called. Uh, but that's was a pretty interesting project. That had to be like around 2013 or something like that that I did that project. Let's do another temperature check. When you got rolling smoke that comes off of it, that's a good time to be checking your temperature. Again, as I said, it's really hard to keep your hand. But I got 222 on there. So it's okay. I'm going to unplug it after a minute anyway. 1 minute and we are unplugging it. It's weird how easy it is to keep your wax temperature pretty high after all the saponification and soap is made. So we got about 15 seconds before I unplug this. Then we'll take a wax sample. I consider it a 20-minute cook in here. Because it's beeswax, you don't want to get real high. So unplugged. Kind of like the smell of it. It's really actually smells quite good. I wouldn't doubt if people would buy a cylinder like that just for the smell. It's actually a very nice smell. So get this little sample put together here. You want to have your sample fairly thick. That's probably a little more. I'm actually going to put the sample on the spoon. It's a little hot to handle. I'll put the sample right here to cool. So yes, our wax is finished there. Kind of see the color of it a little bit on this here. That's kind of the color that it might be. I guess you can't see it. Doing a little bite test. Should cut real good. It's got crunch and softness at the same time. That's really what you want. A weird test, but it's edible. This wax will not hurt you eating it. Of course, a lead cylinder base would, but this aluminum stuff won't hurt you too bad. Basically, it's like eating a burger. And beeswax. I mean, how many of us have chewed on the wax little bottles, that they had? I found you can get those at Cracker Barrel. They're still pretty yummy. I think they're purified white beeswax. Those little bottles. So, see, your cylinder this is gonna sound funny, but your cylinder wax should be crunchy, yet waxy. It's the best way to describe it. Kind of funny, isn't it? So we'll be checking in a few days to see how it turns out. This took half an hour. Our stuff is already starting to congeal a little bit. Our sample. We'll not worry about the sample today. We'll check it tomorrow or the next day. We'll let the sample cool properly. And we'll see how the sample turned out when it does. So I'm going to end the stream now. Thank you for watching. I know that nobody watched the stream itself, but you can watch it, on the YouTube channel. So thank you for watching, and I'm signing off. By the way, if you like these videos, please smash that like button, please. I know that I'm very pedestrian in my style of explaining this, but there's really no place on the net where you can see somebody doing experiments with recording wax. And hopefully soon I won't be able to test it. I have to make a disc lathe. That's one of the things I plan on doing is making a good disc lathe. But I have the advantage of knowing how to make wax blanks. Although there are some people recording on plastic blanks, and that's kind of nice because that's instantaneous, and you can just sell it like that. Or the thing is, though, you can also use that as a master. Uh, One of the instantaneous plastic blanks, you could take it and make a silicone mold of that, and then cast those in epoxy. So if I see somebody actually doing that way, where they make them in the polycarbonate and then they may make them in epoxy, then I'll know that they have watched this video. I watch this stuff very carefully. I watch all the recorders. A lot of times I don't say anything and I just watch and note and watch and see if they, and I'll put little sprinkles of information out there and I'll see if they use them. They dare not say the source. I mean, I'd rather they say the source, but there are certain people who will chastise them if they tell the source of the information. It's kind of interesting. We can see a little bit of the color change of our sample there. From what I see already, it's pretty nice. But this is ending this live stream. It's a nice. I was supposed to do this over an hour ago, but it never happened because the computer wanted to update. The computer thought it was more important to update than do its work. We might have to play around this formula a little bit. This might be a great mastering formula, but it might not be durable to play. So we might have to make another batch with maybe reducing the number, the amount by 1.5%. Maybe using about 13% beeswax. Because it actually takes less beeswax to do the same job that Saracen does. Because beeswax is softer than Saracen or paraffin. So it takes considerably less to do the same. It'll do the same amount of work. It's just a matter of finding out what the percentage is. 15 is a good starting point. When it gets hard and cold, it might be perfect just the way it is. And if it's a mastering, I might have just discovered the Columbia mastering formula because somebody had at Union, they had a Columbia master brown, for duplicating master, and it was kind of yellowish. I have a picture of it somewhere, and it was yellowish cream color, not like the cream I get when I use Saracen wax, but it had that yellowish cast like I'm getting right now on this wax. So it kind of indicates if I should have probably took the cylinder and smelled it. I know it sounds weird, but if I would probably smell beeswax in it, and that would probably tell me, that it's a beeswax mastering formula. But you know what? We don't know until we do these tests. There's a lot of people who say, "Well, why doesn't he settle on a particular formula?" Well, I actually do. It's pretty much similar, but you're kind of running around this target and trying to get closer to the center. That's all it is every time. You're just trying to hone in on the center mark. And that's what they've always tried to do. And really, for recording a metallic soap, there really isn't very much better than that for making cylinder masters. You can't use a lacquer to make a cylinder record because it doesn't shrink. It will not pull out of the metal mold. I mean, when I make a master disc, I'll, I'll go get a disc master record. I'll be right back. So this is a master dubstep. So this is what the master looks like for a modern record. So I don't know. Let's see how this is like that. So in the lacquer, they take sandpaper and the area where the label is, they sand that area as it's spinning. They do the area. This is positive, by the way. That's a master, a modern master made from a lacquer. They make the lacquer on it's basically like fingernail polish on an aluminum disc. This is sprayed with a solution of stannous chloride and silver. They spray on that, and then there's like the face of it's silver, just the very face, and the rest is nickel plated. Got the big old nickel sheet there. That's a master. This is very interesting. So there's a weird colored sample there. As I said, it's cooling, and we'll check that sample in a day or two. So I'm ending this broadcast now. Thank you for watching.